15 years ago, and I found out in my studies that water will seek its own level and will, infiltrate any storage area. And so there's no safe place to store this. We keep making more of it. They're talking about building new nuclear plants. So I would advise Iran not to do that. Go look. They're in an area where there's a lot of sun. Easy. Solar. Use their money to go into new technologies. So it doesn't even become an issue as to whether they're developing nuclear weapons, which the International Atomic Energy Agency says they aren't. So in other words, it's a fake issue. We should be talking about different terms. And the United States is not in a position to dictate to any country on the issue of nuclear weapons because we keep building new ones. Where's our credibility? So I have a whole different basis for negotiating with Iran, and I would go and meet with them on a jihad. I would go and meet with the religious leaders because you need an American president who isn't fearful of these negotiations. President Kennedy said it in his inaugural address. He said, we must never negotiate out of fear, not fear to negotiate. You have to be ready to talk to people. So that's an answer to your question. I hope I covered it pretty much.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
I relate so much to everything that you're saying. Policies that are basically humane instead of deranged, like what this administration is proposing. I want to relate an incident that happened this past Saturday in Plainfield, New Jersey. There's an organization called People's Organization for Progress that was founded by Larry Ham in Newark. He was the youngest councilman in Newark history. And there's chapters of this organization all over. They may even be a Jersey City one. If not, there should be. And the person who heads the Plainfield chapter, he organized a protest against violence because there have been a lot of incidents of violence and there's gangs and shootings and also there's been police shootings of young people. And there were 4 people there standing on a public street corner near a public park, right on a sidewalk, and just staying there holding signs quietly, not and community members. And police came by, and he saw one sign that said "Stop Police Brutality." So he pulls over and says, "Do you have a permit to be here?" And they said, "Well, there's just 4 of us. We didn't have time to get a permit. We're not we're just peaceful rally. We're not a vigil. We're not doing anything." And then he said, "Well, you have." Well, it's just that he said you have to put your signs down. And he came back, and they were about to leave, and he came back and said, "You haven't left yet. You have to leave right in this minute." And he asked their names and asked their personal information, and then he arrested them. He arrested all 4 of them. They brought 4 police cars for 4 people.
So what's the question?
The question is, why, that we're, your concerns about, that we're being policed, and that, police are not there for these incidents of violence.
Let me address that in a broader context. First of all, I know that this program started late, and I appreciate that all of you are here. I just want to direct you to Kucinich.us to join the campaign. We have a strong campaign that we're organizing here. As a matter of fact, my deputy campaign manager, I actually, Vinko Paul, in the audience, he's probably working on some, but he's from this area. So let me answer your question, Bob.
Just how our constitutional rights are being infringed.
Well, we're in a climate right now where there's a lot more law enforcement at all levels are pushing a little bit harder on constitutional questions. Now, these are, people of color have long recognized the difficulties in standing up for your constitutional rights in terms of racial profiling that goes on. So there's a lot of people it's no surprise to. But we're in a climate where there's a lot more fear. And it creates, it complicates. Every single encounter is complicated. And law enforcement is, of course, caught up in that. So one of the reasons why I promoted a cabinet-level Department of Peace and Nonviolence is so we could, in terms of police-community relations, that we engage police in a dialogue at a community level on a constant basis. And because you need that kind of context so that people get to know each other and they understand what the limitations are on police authority, and that people know how far you can go before you're likely to cross the line. But we need to have those discussions so that we understand where the line is on both sides. And the police need to know what, about the Constitution, because sometimes
Right.
there's not an awareness of it. It just isn't. They're not. Today, police have to become aware of certain constitutional matters, but with this administration creating such fear, the lines are getting blurred everywhere.
They're not respecting the Constitution either.
Well, right. So
Yeah.
we need a different environment. But we can. I find, as someone who's been in municipal politics for a long time, that there's ways of negotiating this with police, as long as you have groups of people who come in and they engage in the discussion, either through their councilman or their mayor or directly to the police.
Right.
We shouldn't be at odds. Yes.
I'd like to know what we can do in order to stop and ban anybody who's ever attended a Bilderberg meeting from running for president. Because I think it would give people like you and Ron Paul a much greater chance.
I'm a vegan. I don't do Bilderbergers. So.
What can we do to stop them from ever running for president?
Well, look,
why can't
I don't know. I have to tell you. I mean, that kind of a question involves a level of analysis that would probably take the rest of the meeting. So all I can tell you is that no one owns me. Okay. Yes. Yes, you.
You believe in privacy for all Americans. How do you feel about privacy for convicted sex offenders?
Well, there is a limit that we, this is where it's a little bit more difficult, because when you have people that have been convicted of sex offenses, there are certain things that are being done that kind of put the scarlet letter on them, but there's other things that are being done that, your first responsibility is to protect children in the community, frankly. And for some, they cannot control that impulse. So it's a very difficult situation. But I don't think that you sacrifice the rights of 99.999% of Americans because we haven't been able to negotiate an appropriate way to deal with the rights of the community with respect to sex offenders. We have to recognize that there's some serious problems here, that people are repeat offenders, and that you have to find a way to do it. Now, some of it might be, maybe this is where a national health care plan where you have people who got treatment for mental problems, and some are physical and mental, that they would get the treatment that they need before they become offenders. But we don't have that kind of a system just yet. And until that time, people do have a right in their communities to protect their children in the communities. Let's see. Yes.
Speaking as a member of the new voting generation, because I just turned
Member
of the newest voting generation, because I just turned 18 myself. I just
18 years old and newest voter.
I just have a question. When our generation has seen basically a rise of a president who lied to us, a war that was never justified to us, and basically betrayal by all the higher-ups in terms of everything from healthcare to tuition, what would you say to a person who basically figures that it's easier to be apathetic than get real progress? Because I know a lot of people my age are hesitant to register to vote because they're afraid that something's going to happen like Florida again. And when you think about it, the electoral college votes are what counts, not ours. So what would you say to someone who basically questions the validity of the vote?
It's a great question. I'll try to interpret it. You have a lot of young people who see all this deceit going on, and what do you say to them about encouraging them to participate in a political process that they might even feel is rigged? Right? Is that basically your question? Something to that effect? Okay.
Why should a lot of people wonder why should they vote if in the
Right.
long run we're not voting?
Well, look, that's a serious question. Why should young people vote? They look at what's happening right now, and they just wonder, it's just a hopeless mess, and, who's going to do anything about it? And they're all a bunch of liars anyway. And, I understand that's kind of a prevailing feeling, and that's been going on actually for quite some time, because today, there's probably less trust in government than there's been at any time in the lifetimes of anyone here, and for good reason. You can look at what happened right after 9/11, and the decisions that were made by our government took us down a path of destruction of our Constitution and destruction of other people's. And so young people are pretty aware of what's going on. They watch things very carefully. The future knows when the place that's being prepared for is threatened. And the future of our young people is threatened. Global climate change, global warming, global warming. So what I intend to do, what I'm doing in this campaign, is reaching out to young people and saying, look, let's work together to create a more peaceful world. War destroys young people's futures. Let's work together to create a world where we move towards sustainability, protect the planet, so the young people don't have to worry about these climatological disturbances that would destroy their future opportunities. Let's work together to create education for all. So you don't have to worry about whether you have a job or not. See, education is a basic right. You're covered. You have it. It's done.